This is part 2 of report of findings on case number 631, the distal root. We covered the mesial root in the prior report. The distal root had a large apical radiolucency, suggestive of both necrosis and possible distal root fracture. The preliminaries of the case were covered in the prior report, and I will not review them here. This is the section distal root as we received it, and this is the sagittal split of the root as is our method. The root was split into two halves, and the canal terminus was visible in both halves. The single canal appeared very well debrided, although there appeared to be a pulpal stump of tissue still remaining in the apical section of the root that appeared to be of hematogenous origin. We will first examine the apparent pulpal stump. I'm going to spend some time on helping you with your pattern recognition in correlating the wet specimen with the dried specimen and the sputter-coated specimen, because it is important to be able to identify exactly where you are observing. Such correlation is a learned skill. We are going to look right where the arrow is pointing to. The same view as a semi-dried specimen makes the pulpal stump harder to identify, and the closer view should help you with your pattern recognition. As you look at the fully dehydrated specimen, it becomes even harder to identify the stump, and the sputter-coated view increases that difficulty even more. In the comparative view, spend some time getting your bearings. You'll notice the bright, shiny surface is the instrumented surface, and the dull area where the pointer is the pulpal stump. So we were looking at the left half of the specimen and going to image the pulpal stump. Try and correlate the SEM view with the wet specimen view to get your bearings. As we zoom into that tissue, it appears to be a sheet of pulpal tissue, but a closer examination of the edge of the tissue shows that it is primarily a connective tissue infused with leukocytes primarily. The inference is it is necrotic pulp, which is mostly pus. When we look at the right side of the split root in the same area, just to confirm, we see a tissue that is mostly leukocytes. Taking that same side and looking at the terminus in area 19, we see some areas where there are patent dentinal tubules, but other areas where there is a smear layer, minimal demineralization, and a significant biofilm presence with many bacterial morphotypes embedded into the smear layer. In the same right-handed section, looking more mid-root at area 18, where we have a naked canal wall, it appears to be a very well-debrided canal wall with minimal dentin and some demineralization of the mineralized front. But a closer examination of the smear layer and mineralization front suggests bacterial morphotypes still present embedded into the smear layer. Going back to the left-sided specimen, in a similar area mid-root, we see areas where there is still predentin being demineralized, as well as many open tubules. Such areas are hard to interpret because a demineralization of the smear layer and mineralization front can result in a picture suggestive of bacterial morphotypes, but the confidence level is much less in such situations. In area 13, at the terminus of the left specimen, a closer examination reveals what appears to be a well-established biofilm pretty much everywhere you look. In area 20, coronally, there's an area relatively free from the sectioning debris. When you examine this area, the dentinal tubules appear very clean, and any remaining predentin and the mineralization front appears to be free from any suggestion of bacterial morphotypes. Also note that the peritubular dentin is lost in most tubules, but present in a few, and there has been some demineralization of the intertubular dentin as well. Further apically in the right specimen, in a well-debrided area 6D, a closer examination suggests more bacterial morphotypes in the smear layer over the mineralization front. So clearly, there appears to be a gradient effect with the irrigation device depending on location and distance. For members of the MIE Google group, it might be beneficial to review the high-res images on the Google Drive and see what other structures you can identify. I am open in the MIE group to any questions.